Welcome to another episode of the Global Activation Party for Synchronistic Wealth. Yay! Today we have Chris Reynolds for talking about synchronistic business plans, and he is a high performance coach, lifestyle podcaster who specializes in helping entrepreneurs optimize their productivity and performance levels through proven systems. So whether you're a new entrepreneur or someone who's been in business for years, you can take your business to another level to achieve your goals more rapidly. So I've invited him on because we've met at this amazing business conference in Thailand with a lot of nomadic entrepreneurs, and he's just really been a pivotal person in the group, and as well as had so many friendly and amazing opinions and experiences with a lot of my friends. So over the years, he's created business accelerators while interviewing over 400 successful entrepreneurs in the business Method podcast. He has his own podcast, including lots and lots of famous people: New York bestselling author Jim Rogers, former partners of George Soros, and so many other people like John D. Dumas. So also, he's just done so many really cool things, helped hundreds of entrepreneurs scale their businesses and life using research-driven high-performance techniques. And today, we're so honored and so excited to bring him on to share so much more about how he not only has this business-focused execution, material, creation mindset, but also a part on how he uses meditation and uses other internal tools to balance both sides. So welcome.
Hey, honey, thank you so much for having me. I'm really flattered to be here, and thank you for that lovely intro as well.
Awesome. So tell us a little bit about how you started as an entrepreneur, or rather how you've, what I'd really like to ask is actually how you've changed from different stages of entrepreneurship.
Oh, that's a great question. So I've been an entrepreneur for like 14 years now. So I started in 2006, right before the global recession hit, in network marketing business. So I was working with a network marketing real estate company, and we would sell $20,000 packages, and we would get 50% of the revenue, of the income, or 50% of that would go to us. And I really like that because as a young guy, I could pick up and learn a lot of business tactics, sales skills, business skills, and work as a group with people. The unfortunate thing is when the recession hit 2 years later, that company went upside down and we had no way to make money after that. So I was like, what am I going to do now? How am I going to support myself? So I started getting a bunch of side jobs and hustling just to make sure I could have enough money to live. And then I came across this book called The 4-Hour Workweek. And as soon as I read it, I just gobbled it and I sucked it all up. And I knew that this was going to be my life. And this is 2009. So this was 12 years ago, 12 years ago. Yeah. And I read it, ended up reading it 4 or 5 times. And I bought the audio back when we had CDs, and I bought the CD 4-Hour Workweek audio version, and I listened to it about a dozen times. So it was really soaking in. So then I just started reaching out and trying to figure out, okay, how am I going to make money online, and then start to do this travel thing. And I started building some niche websites online. And back in the day when you could do, it was easier to do AdSense, and we could build a website and then put some links up on it, and it'd pull in a decent amount of money. And I did that until April of 2011. In April of 2011, I bought a one-way ticket to Costa Rica because I was like, okay, I'm making some money online now. I'm going to go abroad. And so I flew down to Costa Rica, and within a month of arriving there, Google wrote a new algorithm and wiped out all the income that was coming in from the niche websites that I'd built. And so I was like, okay, well, I can keep doing this and try to build some income back up. But what else could I do to make money? And so then I started blogging and creating these cool charity adventure trips, because I knew a lot of people in the States wanted to come. I was in Costa Rica, come to Central South America and do adventure travels. And so we would do these projects and trips where we would raise a bunch of money and then climb the tallest mountain in Costa Rica and donate it to children with developmental disabilities in the country. And then we would raise a bunch of money up, and then we would build a farm for malnourished kids in Peru. So we would like homestead the land with the natives there and build this cool farm that's still going today, 10, 11 years later. And then we did something like we hiked across the country of Spain, raising money up to save children in Ghana to get them out of slavery. And so that was fun, but it wasn't making the type of money that I needed. And also a couple of things, as I was traveling, I realized I missed something. I really missed like my like-minded people, my like-minded entrepreneurs. There were a few and far between traveling around the world. And this was before like the digital nomad explosion like really blew up. And so I landed in Barcelona in 2015, and I was a part of this cool entrepreneur forum, and I put it out on the forum like, hey guys, let's do some business accelerators. Let's do some co-living in Barcelona. I'll get the apartments, and we'll build business together, and we'll enjoy the city together. So I started doing that. A bunch of people signed up and turned that into a business called the Entrepreneur House. And I did that for about 3 years. And I realized it wasn't like to live my dream lifestyle. It wasn't sustainable because I was ending up going to all these entrepreneur houses around the world. And it was just kind of sucking my energy. And so I'm like, okay, now what do I need to do to make this sustainable? And I thought, well, I'm doing a lot of productivity stuff. And mindset stuff and goal setting stuff in these entrepreneur houses. What if I took that all out and put it online? And so that's what I did. And I changed the brand to the business method. And now we do one-on-one coaching. We have private masterminds for 7 and 8 figure entrepreneurs. We have one live event, just one that we do in Thailand every year called Get Shit Done Live. And some courses online about productivity and focus. And so that's where we're at now with the business. And I'm loving the model that it's set up as, and something that I think I'll continue to run for the next 5 years at least, maybe longer.
It's amazing. Thanks for sharing that. I can't believe that you.
Yeah, it's a long story. Sorry. I didn't mean
It's all
to
right.
make it
No,
out.
I also am really, I love the trajectory with like all the humanitarian work as well, and then going and focusing back into entrepreneurship and then online, because I know that in the beginning of COVID you had like written out that you were gathering a bunch of entrepreneurs together to do something, and then now it's evolved into this. So I'm curious to know about your mastermind and how it's how not how much it's different from other masterminds out there, but just what's your flavor of it?
Yeah. So I had been hosting these masterminds for a long time, and I did it in the Entrepreneur House, and I did it in other private events and my own as well with acquaintances. And for a couple of years, I had in the back of my mind, like, I really want to create a mastermind community. And so when COVID hit, because I was an entrepreneur in 2008 when the recession hit, I knew when COVID hit something, it was going to hit the entrepreneurs hard. And so when I was meditating, I thought, hey, it'd be a great idea and it's a great time to launch a mastermind. And I asked a few friends about it. I have a guy that's kind of my business coach. I asked him about it, and everybody said, yeah, do it. So we launched private masterminds to help entrepreneurs get through COVID together. This was April 2020, so just about a year ago. And 60 some odd people signed up, and we're like, all right, so we've got something here. And we continued to run those masterminds. And then we after a few weeks, we broke those down into smaller niches, like the 6-figure group and the 7-figure group and the 5-figure group. And then we constructed them in a paid form, and we started to create the model for this mastermind. And so we've been doing that since almost a year now, running these masterminds. And we honed in a little bit more because there was less masterminds for kind of the higher level location independent digital type of entrepreneur. And so I noticed that this was a growing expansion of entrepreneur in the market, because a lot of us as nomads started out with a backpack and a laptop, like all of us, and we made, a few $100, maybe couple $1,000 a month if we were lucky, right? But then over time, I saw these entrepreneurs starting to build really solid high 6, 7, and even 8-figure businesses while they were doing this location independent thing. And I thought, wow, this is really impressive. So why not create a mastermind group, like a mastermind community for these type of people, because they're not going away. People are going to still do the nomad thing. That's going to continue to grow. People are going to build these digital businesses and want this international lifestyle, and they're going to need a place to go. So we focused a little bit more on that specific niche. And so then we just run those groups, and we do a mastermind call a couple hours every couple of weeks. And we break those groups down to 4 to 5 people per group. And myself and my partner, Adam, are on all the calls. We facilitate them. And now that things have loosened up in the States a bit, we're actually going to do our first live event in May. And one thing that also makes this a bit unique is that we're going to handpick the events that we do, and we'll do an event like, hey, let's meet up on an island, and off the Caribbean or something like that, or in Southeast Asia. But we're doing adding this new type of adventure. So we're actually taking them to a course that's taught by special ops trainers who teach people how to survive a kidnapping. And so we're going to go there in May and take our mastermind group, and we're going to get trained on how to survive a kidnapping. And on the last day, they actually bring in professional bounty hunters, and they kidnap us. They put a pillow over our head, throw you in the back of a van, and you've got 24 hours to escape and get back to headquarters with no phone, no money, no anything except the clothes on your back in a city that you've never been to, a new city.
Amazing.
So,
It's just like
yeah.
really survival skill, like adventure.
Yeah, right.
Totally.
Yeah.
It's like boot camp for like intense experiences.
Yeah,
That's
but
amazing.
it's a valuable skill for us that travel abroad or live abroad,
Oh yeah,
because
absolutely.
hopefully it never happens, but it might
You never
sometimes.
know. Like you get more adventurous, you might
Yeah.
end up in a situation like that.
I
Yeah, I've
hope
heard
not.
so many stories about the psychology of how you talk to your perpetrator or like your
Oh yeah.
yeah, and
Yeah.
there's a
Yeah.
lot of that.
Exactly.
Let's talk about wealth and your definition of wealth. So in the beginning, you did the 4-hour week, and you're like, okay, time sounded like something that was a new form of describing wealth. But then,
Mm-hmm.
however, like, you went through the period of time where you didn't have as much revenue and cash flow, and then you realized, okay, it's still important to have material wealth and financial wealth, and then it's kind of evolved over time. So I would love to understand your definition of wealth now, and as well as what you see in your 6, 7, 8, 9-figure entrepreneurs, and how that changes as you up level your business.
That's a really great question. So how I define it, honey, is your number one currency for all of us is time and fulfillment of life, right? Those are the most precious things on earth, other than maybe oxygen and family and friends, good friends, right? So time and fulfillment of life are what make a life great. That's a fulfilled, a fully lived life. And then after that comes, what you do with your time, and then currency. It's kind of like the fourth on the list, making money so you can live the lifestyle that you choose. But it's so easy to get wrapped up in that pattern of focusing just on the money. And I'm like, I admit, I'm challenged with it on a regular basis. It's like, okay, no, this isn't the focus. We got to focus on providing value. The more value you provide, the easier it is for people to pay you for your services and your products. And so that's the way that I define wealth. So if I don't have time freedom, if I don't have lifestyle freedom, if I don't have happiness and content and fulfillment in life, then something's very much bankrupt in those currencies, and I got to pay attention to those before the money, right? And so you asked about the difference in mindset between 6, 7, 8, even 9-figure entrepreneurs. So on our podcast, we interviewed 100 6-figure entrepreneurs, then 100 7-figure entrepreneurs. Then we did 100 major influencers, and we've had a couple billionaires on the show. And then now I'm doing a lot of high performance experts and 8-figure entrepreneurs. And so you can see this transition of mindset for sure. Um, but I think it's like it's really interesting that the most often the higher level people, the more money that they have, um, that I've experienced, the nicer they are, the more grounded they are in their values, the more that they're really focused on providing value, creating great teams, and making a good environment for their work, their team, living happy, fulfilled lives. We had Jeff Hoffman on the podcast, and he's a billionaire. He's one of the original founders of Priceline, and just the sweetest guy, such a genuine and nice guy. I had another guy recently who spent 35 years working with making commercials for Ralph Lauren and Victoria's Secret. Just a jewel of a human being, like just such an incredible person. And so, what I think happens through that transition quite often is that one, as an entrepreneur, we get beat up a lot. Like we get knocked down, we get bruised, we go through all these challenges, and it's very humbling. And so, as you grow this wealth as an entrepreneur, you start to realize the important things in life, the way you treat people, what's important in your own life, also your own mindset and your own thought process. So the higher level folks, quite often, they're creating very simple business models. They use their techniques and strategies that are very simple principles, instead of getting it mixed up or overwhelmed that you see a lot of times in the entrepreneurs that are starting out, or they're just creating their businesses. And so it's a challenge of growth. And I think that's a beautiful thing about entrepreneurship is you get this type of mental and emotional maturity throughout the years, the longer you've been an entrepreneur, that's really priceless. And you can see it when you see a real mature, seasoned entrepreneur. You're like, oh, that person, like they've got some superpower that I haven't got yet, and I want some of that.
Yeah, very interesting. One of the things that I've noticed, and I'm not sure if you have the same experience, is that the more higher level that I speak to people, I also notice like more of an abundance mindset or a lot more generosity. And there's this feeling of, that because they're so confident in their skills or their products or the value that they bring, like, there's this huge giving culture.
Yeah.
Have you noticed that as well?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. And it almost becomes like, I don't want to say a rite of passage, but once you get to a point, it's just kind of not expected, but it's part of that maturity process, because maybe that entrepreneur has been through so many hard times. They realize there's so much suffering in the world, and that some of their money can really help people change their lives. And so you see that, and I think a lot of the newer entrepreneurs would really probably like to do that in their early stages too, but it's very challenging for them when they're going paycheck to paycheck or sell to sell or client to client, and all of a sudden you've got a bunch of money in the bank account, then a month later it's all gone, and you're like, oh my god, how do I refill that? So it's really challenging. When I started out, I as an entrepreneur, I had the patterns of always every month I would donate to some charity, some foundation I liked. And then I went broke. Like when I went really, really broke, I was like, I couldn't donate anymore. And I felt so bad. I was like, oh, man, I wanted money so I could give more away. I really, really did. And then overseas, a few more years of like getting out of that and digging out of that, then it was like, okay, now I can start to give again. But you have to fill your own cup up first, right? Before you start to give to others. So I think that's an important thing to remember.
Yeah, let's talk about business models and business plans.
Mm-hmm.
So you mentioned that simple is something that you value as well, and I do as well, because I feel like the more simple it is, the easier to execute, and just like the more focus you can have on it.
Yeah.
Talk to me about like how either you or people you've seen, how do people simplify it, and then also in a like we talked a lot about value, and this is not something that's new idea or anything like that, but a lot of people define value differently. And how do you
Mm-hmm.
make sure, like, what kind of value do you focus on providing, or what does value mean to you, and then how does that um, like how important, or how has that evolved? Your relationship with value giving evolved over time, and what is it to you today? So it's like two questions,
Yeah.
but
Yep.
kind
Got
of
it.
like in the
Simple
same
and
realm.
value. Yeah. So for simplicity, like, I study a lot of neuroscience. I have a brain scanner that we use with our clients to help them optimize their brains. And what I realize is that there's certain brains that work with complicated business and certain brains that work with simple businesses. It doesn't make one brain better than the other. It's just like what lights up their brain, right? And so for me, simple business models really light up my brain. For a lot of other people, even some people in our masterminds, the complexity of their business models baffle me. It's like, a guy's got an 8-figure business and all these pieces, but that he has to put together and run. But because the way his brain works, he's very good at putting those pieces of the puzzle together. So for me, I'm like, okay, simplicity one. I don't want to have a large company. I don't want to have a company with 30 plus employees. I'm like happy with a max of 5, maybe that. I've seen one business model that a gentleman does about 1.5 million a year, and our business model is very similar to his. 1.5 million a year with one employee, one assistant. That's all he has, and it's pretty much all profit. He's not dumping a lot of money into marketing or anything. And I love the sweetness of that business model because it liberates you so much. Um, and so that's kind of what I replicate. And so we have the podcast that brings listeners through our services and what we do. And then it's real simple. We've got courses, which can be automated, which can be, passive income. We've got the masterminds, which is about building a community, building more abundance. And then we have a live event that we didn't do last year because of COVID, but we've done the previous few years in Thailand. And so it's that simple. I even have minimized my one-on-one coaching that I do because it's a lot of time. And so I'm either going to have to increase the prices or just stop doing it at all because I'm enjoying more working with the masterminds right now. So I took the client level this year and reduced it, by about 60-70% or so to do less one-on-one. And so for me, that I don't know, there's no other words, but like a simple business model is a sweet business model because it can be easily handled, easily managed, and just easily create more abundance for yourself and really help others prosper as well.
Cool. And yeah, I like that. I like that you've really stuck with the podcast model as well for your lead generation, or like just like getting the word out there. Um, how has that evolved? Like, are you noticing like, more and more people are coming through the podcast, or is that your main thing? And how do you reach the right people that you're, that are good, that are awesome for your masterminds through that channel?
Yeah, I'm really fortunate to have such a strong, warm network that still the majority of our clients are word of mouth, which is fascinating. I'm very grateful for that and humbled. Then the podcast serves as number two to bring people through our services, and I think it's a fantastic way to create a personal brand or expand the image of your brand, grow the image of your brand, and bring people through your funnels. And I think traditionally what people see podcasting as let's start a podcast, get a bunch of traffic, and get some sponsors or some advertisers on our podcast, and then we'll make this passive income, and we'll just continue to podcast. But I think people are missing a big play from having a podcast that's a brand that brings people through the funnels of your businesses. And I think there's more money to make there because knowing podcasting, it takes a long time to build a podcast up. It's a lot of work, it's a lot of effort, a lot of editing, and a lot of talking to guests. And it's not a great podcasting is not a good business model whatsoever. But it's a lot of fun if you want to grow your network and learn. It's one of the best networking hacks that you can do. I've had amazing people on my podcast that I would never have been able to, rub shoulders with if I didn't have the podcast. And then it really gets the word out and it brings people through your personal funnels, which if you have high ticket items, especially, that's where the big play is, because people hear you on the podcast, hanging out and talking with this individual they really like and respect. And then they go to your website, they see what you've got going on, and they sign up for something that you have. And you're like, wow, I made a few $1,000 off just, putting that podcast out there and that person coming through my funnel. So, so yes, I think it's great. Was there another question there? I forgot. Yeah.
Um, I lost it as well.
You know what we didn't touch when we talked about simplicity is the
value
evolution of
piece.
value. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Yeah.
Let me ask you like kind of a more refined question on value, because all of the entrepreneurs, right? Everyone, like, once you get to a certain level, you realize, okay, the more value you give, the more people you help, the more people will know what you can do to help them, and then that's how they come through. However, adding value also requires a certain level of creativity as well, because you're iterating the kind of value that you're adding all the time, right? And you're adding different types of value or deeper levels of value. So how do you integrate, I know you do some meditation, or how do you use practices that give you that perspective, or maybe even are you doing it systematically? Like how do you know what value at what time to add, and at what intensity?
Yes, great question. So I'm going to start kind of with this to rewind and add a topic here that plays into this, but I think it's a really good, it's really interesting for people to know. So since we've been scanning entrepreneurs' brains, what I've learned working with the neurologists that we work with is that if a person's brain is lacking in delta waves, which is the the waves that you experience in deep sleep or unconscious, if a person is lacking in that from either bad sleep or lifestyle or whatever reason, their creativity will minimalize, right? And so you need to have good quality sleep or deep meditation on a regular basis to reconnect all the areas and the patterns of your brains and the neurons of your brain in order to expand your creativity. Now, all of us need, as entrepreneurs, we have to be creative. If we can't be creative, we can't come up with a new idea or product or service to help serve the world, and we have to be creative to grow our value, right? And so if somebody is reaching burnout, what happens too when you reach burnout, those delta waves just kind of extinguish. So when somebody's reaching burnout, you really have to reset and start to tap into that deep sleep and get those delta waves back. And I had to do that because I've hit burnout a couple times in my life, and it sucks. It's not fun. You burn yourself out of a business. The business no longer gives you joy. You can't deliver value. You can't make money. It's just a bad cycle to get into. And so, so when you work on that, maybe it's supplements or exercise or whatever it needs to be in order to get that deep sleep, then start to recreate those delta waves and the creativity boost. Then what I do on a regular basis is I make sure, like, I balance my time. I make sure I take weekends off, so I'm resting on the weekends and enjoying myself, being social, having fun. I'm not perfect. Sometimes I work on a Saturday or Sunday because I get excited, but I take the weekends off. But I meditate every morning, and sometimes it's 30 minutes and sometimes it's an hour and 30 minutes. And it depends on what's going on in my life at the time. And pretty much all of the major decisions I've made in my business career for the past, I'd say, 6 years have started off with meditating. And so what happens when you meditate, I'm sure you know this, but you calm all the craziness that's going on inside of your brain and your body. And then you'll have access to your subconscious and superconscious, where you can get better, more creative ideas. And in your brain, what's happening is you're accessing those delta waves, those theta waves, and it's sparking different areas of your brain that release more creativity. And so and then what happens is a pattern, like it's like it kind of snowballs. So you start to get creative again, you start to get more delta waves, you actually ignite this part of your brain called the angular singular cortex. I believe that's what it's called. It's ACC, that starts to glow when right before inspiration hits you. And then the snowball happens, you get more creative ideas. But for me, it always goes back to regular meditation. I need three things in my life to be really happy and fulfilled on a regular basis. I need meditation, I need exercise, and planning. If I get those three things in my life on a daily basis, then 85% of the time I'm going to have a great day. And that maintains my mental state to continue to be creative, regularly.
Awesome. So then that's like one of the ways that you use to have more creativity around the value that you're bringing, and I'm assuming that that's how they materialize as well.
Yes.
So moving on to like execution, right? So like it's great to have all these ideas and great to have all these different plans, but how do you make sure like when you're in execution mode that everything gets done and it gets done according to plan? Is your process like that, or does it shift as as a plan is get executed?
Yes, so I do. So I'm big on one long-term planning. I think if you know your long-term vision and goals, like over your entire life, then that helps so much in the short-term planning, right? Because you can always ask yourself, okay, is this in alignment with my goals that I want for my life 50 years from now? And then you can backtrack, you can reverse engineer that to create your goals for the next 10 years, then to create your goal for the next year, then create your goals for the next quarter, and then create your weekly goals. It sounds complicated, but once you start doing it, it's not that difficult. So every quarter, I make sure to set four major goals: mental, emotional, physical, and spiritual, all in alignment with my yearly goals, which are all in alignment with my 50-year goals. And so I have
So can I
those.
just have
Yes,
a question around like what would be a mental goal and what would be like an
good ask.
emotional goal and what would be a spiritual goal?
Good question. So, mental goal for me always applies to business. So business growth, this sort of thing. Emotional goal, quite often relationships with self, relationships with others, relationship with even spiritual self, and so or love in that category. And then spiritual goals often refer to whatever is kind of calling to your spirit at the time. Maybe it's going to church more, maybe it's reading the Quran, maybe it's meditating, maybe it's just, I worked with one guy and his spiritual goal was to ride his motorcycle and listen to podcasts once a week. And that was good for him. That was a stretch. And so there's no limit. And then physical goal, of course, relating to body and health. And so those are the four, and I make those every quarter. And then every week, I have a weekly planning process that I do Monday morning. It's the first thing I do Monday morning. And I plan out my week based on those quarterly goals. And I look on the quarterly goals. Okay, what do I need to work on and achieve this week? And then I make sure I have three most important things to accomplish every day. And I write those down. I use a physical planner to get off of the computer, to get my eyes and attention off of a digital device. And then I plan those three most important things the night before. So if it's Monday night, I'll plan the most important things for Tuesday and then schedule in any appointments that I have. But I don't like to micromanage. So I'll never fill up my entire day, rarely, occasionally, with meeting to meeting to meeting to thing to do to another most important task. What I'll do is I'll always make sure there's some flexibility. And usually I have that in the afternoon if something comes up, I'm going to do that if a meeting pops up, or if I want to take a nap, or if I want to read. So I have some flexibility in my day as well. So it's not just go, 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 go nonstop through the entire day. And then I'll usually take off in the evening and enjoy the evening as
That's
best as possible.
awesome. Yeah,
Yeah.
sounds like a very, systematic way of doing it. So as you're
Yeah.
doing this productivity coaching and you're managing or you're supporting all these different entrepreneurs, what have you found that, what are some of the deviations to that? And like, what if it's like a super creative mind or like it's just a completely different personality?
Hmm.
What other models of productivity have you seen that's worked really well for people?
That's a great question, and it really depends on each individual specifically. And I really recommend everybody just kind of test their own model out and apply it and do some trial and error until they find their sweet spot. And it took me a while to kind of form my sweet spot. I would try one productivity goal setting structure, then I'd try another one, and just eventually it all came together. I also think too the vast majority, which is something that's interesting, the vast majority of productivity and focus and goal setting stuff that's out there is created by men, and with men minds, right? And so I always encourage the ladies out there to try something different that's not exactly in the same. Like the book The One Thing was created by a man for sure, and so and it doesn't always work for females. And sometimes if they try to do this type of productivity, like it burns them out, it stresses them out. And the same thing for a guy, if he tries an opposite type of productivity, like it burns us out. And but then also comes like with culture, and some cultures are much better with high level analyzation, and some cultures are like South America, Brazil are much better with a lot of flexibility and being able to arrive to a meeting 30 minutes late, and so apply it with your own little twist. But you always need to make sure that your schedule and the productivity and focus that you're working on it's more of an anabolic activity. It's giving you more energy as opposed to a catabolic activity that takes more energy away from you. And if you're planning and the format that you have is taking more energy away from you, that's a sure sign that, okay, it's time to stop, do something different. It's stressing me out. Let's find another way to stay focused and be productive.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, it brings me back to bio class. Love it. I'm like looking at the ATP at the end
Yeah.
of that equation. Um, let's talk about. Gosh, I just had one and then it left. When so let's talk about cash flow, right? So when you're in a
Mm-hmm.
situation where like your planning is, kind of distilled all the way from like that long term, quarterly, daily, and then you're realizing that the reality is not reflecting your plan. And you're like, gosh, like the cash flow isn't coming in. I'm executing exactly what I decided on and I projected is going to be that cash flow. Like, how do you react oftentimes to that? Was there a story where you did that and like when things looked like it was going to go in a completely different direction? Like, what is your response to that, and then how do you still pull through, and then are there cases in which you actually still manage to get like a beyond the result that you're expecting?
That's a good question. So I think because I change my, like, I do a weekly review, and part of the weekly review is what are some of the lessons that I learned in the past week, which helps me create a new path to create goals that will help regenerate that income if some income gets dried up or if a project isn't working. And quite often, Henny, my most important tasks that I do every day are related to, here's another acronym, MGEs, money generating activities. And so my MITs are quite often MGEs, and they keep me in alignment to make sure that I'm producing enough income and revenue in the business. But I've never looked at it like the way you phrased the question, because I think because I I plan do that weekly planning process every week. It's like, okay, assess what's happening right now, stop, do something different, and let's see if this works, or let's make sure that it works. So, but also as an entrepreneur, you need a certain amount. you need to be very adaptable, right? Because if something doesn't work, you can't be attached to it. You've got to let that thing go, and you've got to try something different. And if you don't have that adaptability, then you're ruined as an entrepreneur, because you need to be flexible and adaptable, because it will destroy you financially, because our egos are connected to that idea of working. And I think, again, back to the meditation, it really helps to tap into that creativity and those ideas that come to us, and it really helps us direct what we should do next, what I should do next, what pathway, what new project I should work on, how I should change my trajectory for this and that.
I think that's an incredibly important point for everyone who's listening, because when you are in that zone of tension or stress, it is important to relieve that in order to tap back into creativity. And meditation, or any of the energy work that you're doing, is when you're actively releasing that, that's when you actually get back in touch with a space of openness, so that you can change without the attachment of, oh, success has to work in like this lane. And I'm glad that we brought the conversation into that space. So superpowers, what would you say is something that you're so good at as your genius zone?
Oh, I'm good at marketing. I wouldn't call myself a genius at it, but I'm good at marketing and copywriting. Connecting with people and networking, I think I would put networking as a genius zone. But it sounds a little weird to call it my genius, but it is. What else? Connecting with people, relationship building, podcasting. I think that's it.
Cool. Can I ask you a good
Yeah.
question about copywriting? Because copywriting is
Sure.
such a vast world, and there's
That's true.
so just that I didn't even know where to begin. There's like so many types of copywriting.
hmm
What would you say are like the top tips to have to create the copy that is inspiring people to take action?
Um, I would say, like, I like to write copy that inspires me, and if it inspires me, because I know my clients and customers, because quite often, um, I'm friends with our clients and customers before they even come to us. And if not, like, I don't like having a client or customer that's not a friend. So we'll call them clients, because customers are different. Um, it's weird for me to work with somebody and help them grow and assist them in their business and not have a great relationship with them. So if I'm writing copy that inspires me, um, and I know I can send it to a couple people and they say, yeah, this is really inspiring, and get some feedback, then I'm pretty certain that it's going to inspire, quite a few of the people that are going to read it. And so I think that's it, it's intuitive for me. It's like tapping into something that's really working. Does this copy excite me? If I read it, would I click on it, and would I go to the next page or buy the product? And if I get it right, I think in my own mind it seems to work pretty well.
So it sounds like inspiring is a
Inspiration,
really,
yeah, for sure,
yeah,
for
is
sure,
the
for
type
sure.
of emotion that
That I want to evoke, yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
that you're evoking. Very cool. Cool. So the reason I asked that question is because in the next part of the interview, we're going to do a super short meditation that
Oh wow.
actually draws out some of these genius zones that you have from an energetic and information level, like on a quantum level, and we're going
Okay.
to share that with the group. So another thing that I've noticed, and you can add on to this recipe for this meditation, but another thing that I've noticed from you that's really apparent from this conversation is just your pure adaptability and resilience. Because it sounds like you've gone through a lot, and I mean most entrepreneurs have, right? If they've been in business
hmm
for that long or even longer. And so the level of just bounce back and the optimism that is required to continuously show up again is
hmm
very important. And I find that there's that level of what you call maturity that I can also sense in you. um, Where do you see life go next before we go into the meditation piece? But where do you see life go next for you? You talked about the 4 hour week, you talked about the mastermind, and you talked about having this business model for the next 5 years, with your masterminds. But how, what is just that? I don't know. That's like, it's not like an ultimate freedom, but what is that level? Yeah, what's your next level?
That's a great question. Well, a few things. One, like we've committed to grow our mastermind groups over the next few years. So that's a huge thing. So we're a year in, more or less. So that's a thing. Also, like I'm eager. So I went to, I've been in Austin because of COVID. I just decided to stay here. It's a great community. And there wasn't a lot of other places to go, right? So in November, I went to Mexico, and it just it ignited my fire to travel and be abroad. And so the next thing that I really want to do over the next 3 years or so is I lived in Tuscany in Italy in 2018, and I want to buy a villa there, but a villa that's kind of like a compound for entrepreneurs where we can come and, not a paid thing, but just come and hang out. And if there's some new startup entrepreneurs that want to stay, they can stay in the bunkhouse while we have their co-working space, and they can just generate ideas. So Jamie Foxx has a compound like this. It's 40 acres somewhere in California. His family lives there, and he lets anybody come, any aspiring artist, musician, or some actors, come and stay on his compound for free. They just have to follow the rules and take care of themselves, take care of their own food. And by doing that, he finds new artists to work with, right? And then he partners with them, and then he helps promote them, and then he makes money. He becomes, kind of like indirectly their manager and this sort of thing. And so I want to do that for entrepreneurs in Italy. And so that's kind of my vision over the next, we'll see how long all this travel regulation lasts. But in the next 3 years, I'd like to have that villa for sure. So people like you could come, and people like that are on this show, like if I'm there or not, they could come and they could stay. And obviously there's got to be somebody there managing it, but stay and work on their businesses and generate these ideas and enjoy Italy, and then go about their way, after they've decided they don't want to stay anymore and that sort of thing. So that's kind of what I'm working on, and we belong to some similar groups, and we can bring those groups and our mastermind to this villa, and enjoy the sweetness
Community
of life.
building.
Yes, building communities. Yeah,
Yeah. It's
yeah,
like in your lifeblood. I feel like you're such a community builder. You
It-
love creating live communities, online communities. Yeah, it's
yeah,
definitely part of your jam.
yeah, absolutely.
Cool. All right, let's do the meditations.
Okay.
I'm just